welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for June the 12th of June 2018. I stand to do the prayer and acknowledgement to country. Thanks. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision making, protect us and the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. Acknowledgement to country. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional owners of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders both past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. I must inform you that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair and disclosure of political donations. I have a number of conflict of interest declarations. The first one I have is from Michael Keys, Director Keys, and it's pecuniary interest. And it is significant, Mr. Keys? Significant. Currently the Director with AlburyCity Council, and discussion in relation to macro structure of organisation. Council workshop 12th of June, CW4 update organisational review, meeting date 12th of June, and the action is leave the meeting. And Director James Jenkins, pecuniary, significant. I'd suggest my position is part of the consideration of the organisational review. Council workshop CW4 confidential item update organisational review. Yes?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I ask, is this part of this meeting, the workshop?
Oh, we're just going through them just for recording purposes because we won't be able to record them because the workshop's not being recorded. And the action is leave the workshop. Director James Jenkins, pecuniary, significant. My superannuation is within a defined benefit plan is the reason. Council meeting, CM1 3.3, local government superannuation defined benefit plan. Action is leave the council chamber for this item. Mr. Finlayson, Justin Finlayson, non-pecuniary, less than significant. Brief description of your conflict is prior to my employment with AlburyCity. I work with Gavin Cater at Greater Shepparton City Council. Gavin is now an associate of Centium, who is AlburyCity's current internal audit contractor. Council meeting CM 11.3, minutes of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting, 12 June 2018 is the meeting date. Action, declare less than significant non-pecuniary conflict of interest. However, no further action is required and he will remain in the chamber. We have Director Bradley Ferris, pecuniary, significant, member of local government superannuation defined benefit scheme. Council meeting CM 13.3, local government superannuation defined benefit plan. Meeting date is tonight's date, 12th of June. Action is to leave the chamber. And Brad Ferris, Director at AlburyCity, pecuniary, significant, relation to the workshop item, which is CW4, confidential item update of organisational review, and the action is leave the chamber. Thank you. Mr. Zachnich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This advice relates to disclosure of political donations and requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. The Act under Section 147 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. Forms are also available at the back of the chamber during meetings. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 79C1 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council or a council committee. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 2A, Part 6 of that Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Zaknich. We have apologies now, CM4. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that council receive note and accept the apologies of councillors Doxey and Cameron and grant leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. There is no mayoral minute. CM6 action plans. Happy to accept a group motion 6.1 to 6.4. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. The actions complete for noting only, the actions in progress and long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday the 28th of May 2018. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation of the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday 28 May 2018, if we cross the two off there, at 6 p.m. be confirmed, noting a correction to item 14.1 alternative motion options for biosolids transportation and disposal, contract number 17/01917. The resolution should have reflected only the estimated contractual value with Synergy Resource Management, not the total cost to council, and therefore is corrected to read that council accept the tender submission from Synergy Resource Management, option A, for schedule of rates, contract number 17/01917, alternative options for biosolids transportation and disposal, with an estimated cost of $1,598,559, including GST, over the 3-year contract term.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second the motion.
Thank you. I have a question, Councillor Vanderman. Did you wish to open debate on this item at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Question from Councillor Glacken. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Chair, through you to the most relevant member of staff. My memory of the report was that there were a number of tenderers, and I would just like to clarify whether or not the factor that has altered the value for the tender, the successful tender in the meeting, is that the same factor that would affect each of those tenders?
Mr Ferris.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it was simply to align the procurement up with the preferred contractor. So you may recall in the report there were 3 columns. The first column was a column regarding council's ongoing costs during a start-up establishment period. The second column was the direct costs with the contractor, the relevant contractor, and then the final column was the total of the two. The preferred contractor had a start-up cost in the order of $600K. Therefore, on the night we passed a motion in the order of 2.2, where it should have only reflected, the motion should have only reflected the actual costs or estimated expenditure with Synergy Resource Management.
Councillor Glacken, you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. If I could seek further clarification through you,
Yes.
Mr Chair. So my question is really, did that column, therefore the factor that has changed this figure, did that really affect all 3 tenderers, or is it just this one tenderer that affected?
Mr Ferris.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it affected all tenderers, albeit one tenderer could start immediately, so the first column was 0 for them.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor Vanderman, did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM8 reports from the community forums. CM8.1 report from community forum held on Monday the 7th of May. Councillors, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council receive and note the report of the Community Forum held on Monday, 7th of May, regarding development application 10.2017.35851.1, alterations and additions to Star Hotel.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Yes, very briefly, Mr Mayor. This was a community forum, and I noted at the forum, and it's recorded accurately, that the proponent and his applicant did not make a submission. I believe that was a poor decision, and I also note that their reasons were that they would listen to allegations made by objectors. I think this is a poor sign from planning that people immediately assume that people who make submissions are making allegations. How are we ever going to get good planning decisions when objectors are labelled, or people who submit objections are labelled as making allegations? I think it's a very poor start to this whole process, and we will have to make a decision, I presume, in the next meeting of council, but it's not a good start.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM9, there are no notices of motion or rescission, no presentation of deputations. CM11, the reports, minutes of committees and working parties. CM11.1, minutes of companion annual advisory meeting. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes and recommendations of the Companion Animals Advisory Panel meeting held on the 16th of May 2018 be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
I'm happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM11.2, minutes of the Murray-Darling Association Region 1 meeting held on the 25th of May. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes recommendations of the Murray-Darling Association Region 1 meeting held on 25th of May be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you wish to speak to those?
Briefly, it should be noted that a motion came from that meeting which will go to the annual conference of the Murray-Darling Association, and that motion related to management of the river. You may recall that in 2016, the MDBA was about to restrict flows just as we came into Easter, which is a major tourist time for river communities. And this year they restricted flows on the eve of Australia Day, which resulted in the cancellation of all the tours of the Sienna Daisy over the Australia Day long weekend. So that this motion simply asks them to consider in their regulation of the river tourism-related activities over long weekends.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM11.3, minutes of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on the 16th of May. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Chair. To move that the minutes and recommendations of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on the 16th of May 2018 be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to those minutes?
Yes, very briefly. There's just to note that there's also an attachment from the chair of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting, also attached there as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And no further questions. Happy to put the motion. Those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM12, there are no documents for sealing. CM13, officers' reports for consideration. CM13.1, draft 2018-19 operational plan. Councillors, thanks. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A acknowledge the submissions received during the public exhibition period. B, amend the exhibited draft 2018-19 operational plan, draft 2018 to 2022 4-year delivery program, and draft 2018 to 2028 long-term financial plan by allocating $115,000 in 2018-19 for new Lavington Swim Centre diving structures, revising the 4-year delivery program statement of activities as follows. Number 1, Albury 2030 Strategic Action 1.7.1, improve infrastructure and opportunities for walking and cycling, replace, implement pedestrian access and mobility plan projects with implement the footpaths and bicycle paths program. And 2, the Albury 2030 Strategic Action 3.2.1, develop and implement strategies to improve community safety and amenity, amend implement road safety strategy to implement the road safety plan, and reflecting amendments required to support AlburyCity's proposed low-cost loans initiative application. C, adopt the amended draft 2018-19 operational plan, amended draft 2018 to 2022 4-year delivery program, and amended draft 2018 to 2028 long-term financial plan. D, vote the expenditure set out in the amended operational plan for the 2018-19 year. E, make each rate and charge for the 2018-19 year in accordance with the exhibited 2018-19 statement of revenue policy. And F, make each fee and charge for the 2018-19 year in accordance with the exhibited 2018-19 schedule of fees and charges.
You comfortable with the rest there? Happy to accept those as an appendix? Yes, I'm happy to. Thanks, Councillor Con. I'm after a second, Councillor Stutchbury.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to speak to it? Thanks.
Only briefly, Mr Mayor. A lot of work goes into budget preparation by the staff. I was pleased to see a few submissions from the public during the public exhibition process. A few of those have resulted in amendments to the budget, so it's been worthwhile going through that process. There's an enormous number of positive initiatives for the community in the 4-year plan, and I look forward to seeing them realised.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderen, you have a question?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, just one of the submissions for us from vicinity centres, was that, in another word, is that like Lavington Square and the one down here in
West End Plaza.
West End Plaza? Yeah, okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you,
Thank
Mr
you.
Mayor.
Just on that issue, probably Mr Ferris, I see one of the issues they raised in their submission was about the drainage to the lower level of their car park. It's a prevailing issue that a lot of councillors get complaints about when it rains, but they seem to believe it's our responsibility. Can you clarify that for me, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the drainage system, our current drainage system runs in Townsend Street or the main. I suspect they have a pump system for their lower areas within their car park. So our response was accordingly back to them. They haven't come back to us with any feedback from that. We're more than happy to work with their plumber around where their lines go, and if we've got any details from their construction phase about some of the infrastructure they've got in place, then we're more than happy to support them. But just on the information provided, we believe it's just an internal issue they have when it rains, and there's some obviously water ends up into their car park and pools in their low areas, which is lower than our main.
Okay, Councillor Con, did you wish to close debate on that item?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the item. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.2, Councillor Merrill fees for 218.19. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A receive and note the report on councillor and Merrill fees for 2018-19. B, increase the councillor fee to $19,790 and Merrill additional fee to $43,170 for the 2018-19 period in accordance with the maximum level for regional rural councils. And C, increase the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee external members' annual fee by 2.5% to $4,896.23, and the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee external chairperson annual fee to $6,799.76 for the 2018-19 period. Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
I'll reserve my right of reply should there be any debate.
There appear to be no questions or debate. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
No, that will be fine, Mr Mayor.
Okay, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.3, Local Government Superannuation Defined Benefit Plan. Let the records reflect that Directors Ferris, Keys and Jenkins are leaving the chamber. No, you're staying. Okay. You need to have a good look at your superannuation, I think. Okay. So just to correct that, we have Directors Ferris and Jenkins just left the chamber. Thank you, Mr. Keys. Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that A, we receive and note the report, and B, advise the Canberra Region Joint Organisation that it will make its own representations to local government super regarding the impact of the defined benefit plan on AlburyCity's financial performance. I think
Thank you.
should read that we will make our own representations. Yeah.
Yeah, we need the we
Yeah.
that it will make. Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, just to speak to that.
No, report's quite clear. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. If someone can go and retrieve the two directors, please. Thanks, Mr. Keys. Thank you, gentlemen. CM 13.4, the Corporate Risk Plan 2018-19. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council endorse the Corporate Risk Plan 2018-19.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
There being no question or debate, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.5, Investment Policy and Procedure Review. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Council A adopt the draft revised investment policy and procedure. B, place the draft revised investment policy and procedure on public exhibition for 28 days. And C, adopt the exhibited revised investment policy and procedure if no public submissions are received.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Happy to second that.
Councillor Vanderman, wish to speak to that at all?
Yeah, only briefly. There was only just one slight alteration, an extra level in there, but I think that over the 2 years of this council, we've got some clear guidelines around our investment policy, which have changed considerably, and I think for the better. So I think this is just a basic housekeeping amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. There being no further debate or questions, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.6, Related Party Disclosure Policy. Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. To move the recommendation as a motion, Mr. Mayor, that Council adopt the draft AlburyCity related party disclosures policy.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, we commenced this process last year and it's been in play for a year. It's an important part of the transparency of the practice within council. So I endorse this policy.
Thank you. Being no further question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.7, Provision of Mowing Services for Council Parks. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the recommendation that Council accepts the lowest tenders for the respective companies, listed in the following table for separable portions, contract number 17/01772, provision of mowing services for council parks, reserves and roadsides for a 3-year term commencing 1 July 2018 and ending 30 June 2021. Do you want me to read out the... I'm happy to read them out. It won't take long. UDL Group, number of sites 40, costs 2018-21, including GST, $443,085. MapL Proprietary Limited, 57 sites, $348,957, including GST. And Trevor J. Jones Commercial Mowing, 41 sites, $84,525. Total 138 sites, $876,567.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan.
Can I just start briefly with a question, perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, to the relevant member of staff? I noticed that whilst we talk about what the last contract cost us and the previous contract, there was no actual council budget for this particular project. Was it not required, or we just worked around what it cost us the last time?
Mr. Ferris.
Mr. Mayor, the budget's split over a whole range of ledgers, but it is on historic. It's set on historic costs. When preparing the budget for 18-19, we considered not only the past 3 years but previous years as well. So there, at this stage, we believe there's ample funds within the budget to cover the recommended contractors.
So can I just have a follow-up then? So are we able to get a figure at some stage, and I'm happy for you to take it on notice, how this compares, the figure that we're recommending we accept tonight, how does that compare with the budget that we've got set for those particular maintenance schedules?
Mr. Ferris?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly I can provide the details of the different ledgers and the amount budgeted in the current budget order.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, just to speak to that.
Yeah, look, briefly, obviously it's a little bit more expensive than the last 3 years, but I think that having three groups doing the things shares the risk, if you like, with these, but it also provides three companies with work and obviously local employment, which I think is critical and part of our our ethos at council is to provide local companies with these opportunities. I do note with some interest though that, and I'm not sure whether they were playing games, but one of the quotes was for $8 million, and I just thought I'm not sure whether we moved the decimal point the wrong way or what, but I just could not believe that somebody would bother to quote that the job for that sort of money. But anyway, I think we've got a good result. We've got three companies that are all capable of doing this job, and I think it's provides them with certainty for a 3-year period as well with this amount of work. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. I think they're from out of town. They're probably flying down the equipment.
On a daily basis.
On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 13.8 Development Application 10.2017.35437.1. Thank you. Councillor Con.
Thank you. I move that Council A receive and note the contents of this report, and B refuse development consent to development application 10.2017.35437.1 for a service station and convenience store and signage at Part Lot 1 DP 802410, number 375 Wagga Road, Lavington, for the reasons contained in the draft determination included at attachment 6 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to open debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, look, I thought this report was pretty straightforward. The staff have assessed that there are risks to the users of the site and the surrounding road network because of the applicant's failure to address traffic issues. They were given the opportunity to provide additional information or amendments last year and didn't do that. I believe this would have been rejected by our staff, and it's only coming to council because of the change to the delegation of development applications made recently. And based on the report, I'm quite comfortable refusing this application.
Thank you. I have another speaker for, but several questions. Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to get some idea from the relevant member of staff through you about what our costs have been so far in dealing with this refused development consent, and is there any way of us recovering those costs, seeing that at this stage this whole thing is not going to go ahead?
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the development application fees are set by the state government. Council has very little opportunity to reflect any changes in that or to seek compensation for the actual time spent on each application. It's spread across the board and the wide variety of applications that we deal with.
Comfortable with that? Councillor Stashby, question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the relevant member of staff. It did intrigue me that the applicant was, or the proponent was offered the chance to revise the plans and chose not to do so. I just wonder if this is a common occurrence that a proponent might choose not to alter the application.
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to be honest, it's not that common. That's why we persisted, giving numerous opportunities, starting as early as August last year and continuing right through until last month and almost on a weekly basis over the last 6 weeks, seeking further response, further changes, and we've been unable to elicit any of those. And that's why we've got the support of the owner of the property to bring this to a head and have a final determination made.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, you have a question?
Yes, if I may, through you to the most relevant member of staff, Mr. Mayor. With reference to page 100, it says here in the options, the last paragraph in the options, and I'll just preface it with this and then I'll ask my question. Consequently, this report recommends that council resolves to refuse the application. So it really is a staff recommendation to the councillors as per option 4 for the reasons included in the draft determination. My question is about really what effect this has had on council's reporting, because we have to report on the duration that it takes us or takes council to process development applications. So council, the staff, it would appear, would have rejected this application had it not come to council. Can I ask 2 questions? One is, when would staff have rejected that? And 2, what effect does that have on the figures that we report on the duration it takes for applications?
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's probably 2 parts to that. I'll answer the first issue in that this application, because it's a refusal, typically we will refer these to council. We don't refuse that many applications, and because they potentially have an appeal right attached to them, and it is a confrontational in some cases, we will generally refer these directly to council, irrespective of any other interests, for a final determination. In light of that, the subsequent answer is that there's really no difference between when staff would have made this final decision. It may have been 2 weeks ago, as opposed to coming up to the final report tonight. As indicated, we did try and make a determination or seek their additional response back in August last year. We had deadlines in January, March, early this year, so there could have been at least 3 to 5 months saved in the processing of this application. But that time will be added to the overall figures in our determinations and does affect our processing times overall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. With that extension of time, there used to be, but I'm not sure if it still applies, that there was a stop clock effect. Is that still applicable? And if it isn't, fine, but if it is, then what sort of proportion of time does that account for, noting that we're waiting for such a significant period of time? Thank you.
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's 2 figures that we report on in regards to processing times. One's a gross time, which is the complete time from when an application is lodged right through to a final determination. There's a separate figure then, it's called the net processing time, which excludes those times set aside for when we're chasing additional information. So the period from our request to subsequent responses, and then if there's a further request, depending on how that goes, that time is taken out of the net processing time.
Councillor Stashby, question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. Could that member of staff foresee now that we're having two full council meetings a month that there might actually be a reduction in time achieving some of these decisions?
Mr. Keys.
Pardon my hesitation, Mr Mayor, but, being put on the spot, I'd have to answer that may not necessarily be the case, just given the additional reporting that we're now processing, and those requirements have placed an additional burden and the processing time required around that. It does facilitate more regular reporting to council, which can facilitate an earlier time, and does make it a little bit easier rather than having one final determination once a month. But there are additional burdens that have been placed on the workload at the moment.
Councillor Vanderman, you have a question?
Yeah, on the same line as Councillor Glacken was questioning. We've given these people quite a few opportunities to respond to requests. Is that normal to give them that many opportunities to provide or to change their mind about the development application? So through you, Mr Mayor.
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's not normally the practice. In this instance, we were given undertakings by we're dealing with two different parties, the proponents being the operators of the future service station, as well as the owner of the land. And we were trying to appease both parties and bring both parties to the table. We had one of the consultants acting on behalf of the proponents or the owner, who was away on extended leave during another period, which followed up a subsequent request for further information. It's been a combination of a number of factors. It's a key site that we thought should be resolved, and if there was a willingness from the parties to resolve them, they could be.
Can I just have a follow-up, Mr Mayor? On the basis of the answers to the questions that Mr Keys has provided to Councillor Glacken and myself, is there, when we report our statistics for processing time, can we have a sort of an asterisk that says this one was unusual and it caused, X number of days blowout in our processing times? And I'm just wondering whether that's feasible, because obviously it's an unusual circumstance at this particular one.
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I certainly take on note the request. We can investigate and see whether we can isolate those out and highlight those for council's future reference.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. There being no further questions or debate, Councillor Conn, did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you.
We need a division, councillors. All those in favour, Councillor Stutchby, Councillor Mate, Councillor Conn, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Vanderman. Those against, there are none. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.9, request for reduction of section 64 contributions. Councillor King.
So, Mr Mayor, through you, forward the motion to receive and note the report, grant a concession for the section 64 developer charges of $2,460.48 per basin. The operator is to be advised that this will require lodgement of an application to modify development consent number 10.2017.35658.1, and that the section 64 contributions must be paid within 28 days of any modified consent being issued.
Thank you. Have a seconder, Councillor Stutchby.
Happy to second the motion and the amendment contained within.
Okay, just waiting for the 28 days to be concluded. Thank you. Councillor King, I have two questions, but did you wish to open debate on this issue?
Yes, look, this is another beauty salon issue that we've had to decide on the developer contributions. In the report, the applicant has set up a little shop in Dean Street. I went for a walk down Dean Street the other day. There was 19 vacant shops in our main street. I think anything we can help small business with, and I'd like to see actually a more significant discount. However, that would set a precedent. So half price is probably where I'm at, and that we should be supporting small business. I also read in the report we're down to counting, 100 mils of water per treatment of eyebrow washing or whatever it is. So we're really getting down to the nuts and bolts of it. But again, I'm supporting this in regards to small business having a go, setting up in our main street. And again, 19 vacant shops, last count. And I hope other councillors support it.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Glacken, question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, through you to the most relevant member of staff, can I ask why the staff recommendation was for that it be the Section 64 contributions would be paid within 7 days, and what the implications of the 28 days are?
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation, including 7 days, was made in light of the lengthy delay it has taken to get this formal request and for a modification to be submitted, as well as recognition that a development application was not forthcoming initially and the business started without consent. The extension to 28 days doesn't make a significant difference. It just requires further follow-up at 4 weeks instead of 1 week.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, question?
Oh, no, it was around the 7 days. I was just wondering if it was a statutory requirement that we have that 7 days, or whether 28 days was still okay for me. It's only just giving him 28 days to pay the money. So.
Thank you. Question, Councillor King.
It's just more of a clarification of that. That's exactly right, Councillor Vandervan. It's a small business, and a charge of $2,460 is a significant amount, and hopefully they'll pay it beforehand if it gets approved.
There being no further questions or debate, Councillor King, did you wish to close debate on this item?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against?
Division, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Thanks, Councillors Vanderman, Stutchbury, Mack, Con, King, Glacken, Hurley and Vanderman. Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. All carried. Motion is carried. Thank you. CM14 Officers Reports for noting. CM14.1 Monthly Development Statistics, May 2018. Thank you, Councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the information in the Monthly Development Statistics May 2018 report be received and noted.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the report. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM14.2, the Albury-Wodonga Visitor Economy Trends 2017. Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Mr. Mayor, happy to move the council receive and note the 2017 Albury-Wodonga Visitor Economy Trends Report.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very happy to second that recommendation, noting the excellent figures within the report.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, just to open debate.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, obviously what this shows is a couple of things. One is that our visitor economy is very strong, and that our website is attracting quite a deal of inquiries, and that those inquiries have increased by, I think it's over 200% over the last 12 months. So it says there visitation with 123% increase in visitation to the website. I think that trends very well, and we can just hope that it continues.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. There being further no other question or debate, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Delegates' reports for noting. There are none. Notice of urgent business. I haven't been made aware of any, and we have no lights coming on. CM17, confidential matters. 17.1, expression of interest, lease of Turk's Head building. Councillor King.
It's confidential, isn't it?
You've got to move that.
Oh, sorry.